like immediately tears will prick my eyes, and I'll feel home, this kind of held home. The greatest power I have is my attention, and to gather myself in completely is the best. That's all I felt I could do, was to occupy my space as fully as I could and see what happens then. And every move is a surprise from there. I'm trying to shift my focus from perfection and what you want it to look like and all of that, and back to now, back to now, back to now. That's the job.
So today we have a very special guest, Áine Divine, who is a watercolor painter and a lovely teacher as well. Welcome to the podcast, and thank you so much for being here. Like a huge thank you.
Thanks very much for making it happen. It's my pleasure to be here. Yeah. Nice. I was looking forward to the chat with you.
You mentioned like your journey with watercolor began with a gift from your mother in your teens. Do you think you would have naturally found your way to watercolor without that?
I don't know, really. I was thinking about this. I was walking in the field there thinking about, no, if Miwa asks me about my early kind of inspiration and things, I have the story that I talk about with my mother getting me the watercolor set when I was 13 or something. I don't know if that's actually even true. I'm sure she did, but like, I need to check with her. I remember having a little set anyway, and using it a lot. But what your question was to ask me if I would have found my way to watercolor, I'd say I would. I think I would have. I like to try out lots of different things, but I love the way that I love the water in watercolor and how it flows, and that kind of, the kind of movement that's possible with it. Then element of chance as well, the way that the pigment moves around according to where the water is laid. And it's delightful that, there's a bit of a surprise in it. But I never really knew how to use watercolor or anything. I just had these paints before I learned that there was supposed to be a particular way to use watercolor or something. And so I guess I just kind of, I played about with them myself. I used to like watercolor more than when I was in college even. I remember like doing lots of sketches. I lived in a flat with 13 other people. It was like a house, a few stories. And there was always somebody lying around to paint, and it would always be watercolor that I would reach for to do those paintings. Well, actually, in the final year of the fine art course for the final show, we were to do paintings, and I did get my friends to come in, and we were to have a show of our work, and I was all worried about it because I just loved to paint in watercolor, and these were often considered sketches and not really the final thing. And so in the end I moved into the studio where all these looms were. I went away from all the painters, and I just kind of got my friends to come in and sit in the weaving room, and I set up a mirror behind me so that they could see what I was doing. But those paintings were made in oil, most of them. And because I didn't feel inspired to make the watercolor sketches into something else. I thought they were just the things that I did and they were done. I didn't want to start extracting something from them or trying to develop them. So in order to have some sort of a show, I needed to have people come and sit for me. Because I think observational painting, especially then, was the key for me. That was what I loved, and that focused attention on what's here now, rather than developing imaginative ideas.
I could go off to a different direction with that answer, but I'll keep with my questions.
Yeah, well done, you.
Okay. You've often talked about helping people access that state of being in the flow during creative work. And how do you guide your students to find this balance between challenge and skill in their art practice?
Balance between challenge and skill.
And skill, because I've heard that those two combined is when the flow, like a creative flow, happens.
Okay.
And it's a balance between those two.
Yeah, I hadn't heard about the challenge and skill. Now I'd need to think about that. What I remember hearing was like the balance. I think it's a Rumi thing between discipline and surrender. And there's something like this kind of honoring the moment or something. What is it? Let me see now. I mean, I love talking about this because it's elusive. The flow thing is elusive, and I know myself. I have to kind of outwit myself in order to even present myself to an empty page. And it's ongoing, like to try and somehow encourage myself to the work. So this is why it's interesting to me. And this is one of the main sources of inspiration around teaching, is when I grapple with trying to get there myself. It isn't as though there's a button and every time you do this, this and this, the flow will automatically, there'll be torrents of flow suddenly flooding through you, pulsing out your fingers. I mean, there are things you can do to help it, I think. And even one of the things as I look around this really chaotic room is a clear surface is a very inspiring thing. Even if everything else is behind you in a complete state, having a clear surface can be a helpful way of just giving a bit of space. All we need is to create a little bit of space. This is why, I had my sister come and do the Tai Chi before the workshop. It's why I show up in advance without having an idea of what I'm going to do, because I think maybe the best thing I can do is show that I don't know if it's going to work out or not. Like when I turn up to do a demonstration, I need to, I think, be honest in that and not have it pre-planned, or it seems to me like there's something in the energy of being willing to risk losing it all, or not lose face or something like that. That is a bit in, it seems to be, once that atmosphere is there, and we're not afraid to present ourselves as we are, flaws and all, I think then this maybe permission is granted to folk who are around too. And there's things that each person will have their own little thing. And because I've struggled with it so much in the past, I would imagine a lot of creative folks struggle with engaging that flow. Because of that, and because I'm still at it at the age of 54, I have discovered ways like that, and a lot of them is about really just giving yourself a break, like your man Chris Westfall in his book Easier says, what is it now? Start anything and everything by being easier on yourself. So that, and I think particularly with creative stuff, it's essential that there isn't, I mean, even the word essential feels hard. It's very helpful if there isn't a kind of a trying hard. I think there's some sort of thing that's effortless in it.
It sounds like you have few things in place to help you get into the flow. Like, I guess you have to almost find that on your own terms, what works for you.
Yeah. And it's through the teaching that I've made myself do it, because I think left to my own devices, I might just be too lazy, or maybe I don't respect my own practice enough. If I have to share it with someone else, I go to the trouble of finding out what's going to be there, what will it take, and I'll tend well to myself before a workshop. And I've often thought, if I were to devote the same energy to my own creative kind of thing at home or in the studio or whatever, that, I'm sure that would reap lots of new things or something. I don't know. But you just do what you can, don't you? You just kind of do what you can.
At your first Portrait Artist of the Year in Glasgow in 2013, I believe. Yeah, you talked about being nervous.
Yeah.
But by 2014, you appeared to almost savor the experience that you were having. So was that flow influenced by being at your home soil in Dublin, or having family there, or meditating beforehand, I heard in the car, or something else, or all put together? What do you think?
Yeah, well, I remember having the intention the previous year that if I was to apply again, I would do it differently. I remember knowing I don't want a day like this again, where I've got, a kind of a tight belly and my hand was kind of shaking, and I had all of this kind of burden of wanting to perform well. I thought, it's not worth it, even if I had succeeded. It would have been awful if I had succeeded that time, because then I would think that was a good thing or something. I don't know. So that was the first thing, the intention of wanting not to have that same experience repeated, but being intrigued by it, because it's a lovely thing to work with other artists and have these incredible sitters, and I love the interaction with the the cameramen and the audience, and all of that felt like a really fertile ground for this thing. It's a magical kind of container, the whole thing. So I did want to do it again, but I wanted to show up differently for myself, to have a fulfilling experience for myself. And I think all the things you mentioned there, I hadn't thought about being on home soil, but I suppose, and I might have even mentioned that in the past, but I had forgotten about it. But always when I get off the plane or drive across, when I land on the soil of Ireland, I mean the concrete, but underneath there is the soil, I often find like immediately tears will prick my eyes, and I'll feel home, this kind of held home. And I love Scotland too. And I actually went for my walk in the woods there and picked up some soil and brought it back with me for this. There's something about holding the earth, you know. And I do love that kind of tactile, elemental thing of our kind of bodies being of the earth, really. So there's something very grounding. I guess grounding is the thing that happened for me. I did a grounding meditation in the car on the way to the second heat, the one in Dublin, and that was really helpful. And then I think I was listening to Eckhart Tolle or something for a while. I'm not sure. I mean, I don't do that now, but at the time there was something. But I think in the end I could only get one song, and it was "Come On Eileen" was the song. And in the end, all I was listening to was that on repeat. And I don't know if I said that in the other interview that you listened to, but when I was painting Neil Hannon, he came up to me at the end and he said, "Come on, Eileen," 18 times. He said, "I thought you were nuts, you know." But he could hear it on my earphones. I didn't realize that. But I would say, yeah, that thing of knowing that the greatest power I have is my attention, and to gather myself in completely is the best. That's all I felt I could do, was to occupy my space as fully as I could and see what happens then. And every move is a surprise from there. And it's lovely because you're delighted yourself by the process of it. And actually have this spirit of abandon about it too, because there's a sense of, I don't mind what happens in the end, because I'm having a great time here.
Yeah.
There's this bubbling joy, this
that
kind of
way.
bubbling up. But it's not, Miwa, later on in the, I think in the semi-final I felt something of that too. In the final I remember it wasn't like I could repeat that. In the final it didn't feel the same again. I felt nervous again, and so it's not as though I found the answer. There I am now, forevermore. I'll be joyfully, dancing around the easel. No.
It's just a mixture of so many elements put together.
Yeah. Never a given.
See that.
And that must be honored as well, I think.
Do you have any reflections or lessons? I guess you kind of answered that from your Sky Portrait Artist of the Year experience. You did mention before how it brought recognition for your different approach to watercolor, because it's quite different. You said the start of it was like you didn't know how to correctly use watercolor per se, but is there anything you do differently?
Is there anything I'd do differently if I were back there again?
Yes.
I never thought about that. I mean, I thought that Christian Hook was the man to win it. I thought he did a great job, and he, did brilliant programs after it. And I couldn't visualize myself doing something like that. Well, I suppose I could have. But there was a sense of it all being just fine. That it was fine as it was. And I've not really considered what I would do differently, I don't think. I didn't sleep very well the night before the final, so maybe I would have, worked harder on that somehow.
It's so hard to.
I know. A comfy bed. I don't know. I mean, it was fine. Let me see. I don't know if there's anything I really would have done differently. I actually really, really loved it all. I really loved the whole process and the support I felt, and the validation, the sense of you are not only good enough in what you do, but we're interested to know more about it. People were, the way, this is lovely. Like when you're working on stuff and you have these joyful transports of joy on your own, it's that's enough to keep you going, kind of. But it's fantastic when someone shows a bit of interest and you hear yourself talking about your process in a way that you haven't really articulated to yourself even before. And this is exciting. It kind of gives a bit of a frame of reference around it, and I felt a sense of like good enoughness. I'm good enough as I am. It's a very rare thing to feel that, like. Pardon?
It fed your system, your creative system.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was really, I was very grateful for that. Yeah, so I don't know if I'd have done any things differently. communicating with people from all over the world after it felt really lovely as well.
Thank you for taking the Myers-Briggs 60 personality test. If anybody wants to know about it, I'll have a link in the episode show notes. But so you mentioned that you're an ENFP, and I can see how naturally you can create from what inspires you. Like you can follow your path to inspiration, and it seems like such an authentic and effortless process for you. And as a fellow ENFP, I feel that this ability to stay aligned with what excites us comes quite naturally. And I know it's not the same for everyone. For those who struggle to tap into their creative spark or stay authentic in their work, what advice would you offer?
Are you an ENFP as well, Mia?
Yes. And that's why I just thought you must be an ENFP.
And I must do that one from the link you sent. I meant to do that. But I did it on the one anyway. Yeah, so ENFP is what I am. Okay, I would say that everybody's got things that that they feel excited by. You know, actually right now I'm looking at these cyclamen here, kind of shooting skyward, you know. And I feel like there's something exciting there, you know. There'll be different things that I would imagine that everybody's got these kind of, you know, Matt Haig said, he's a writer, and he said our natural response to beauty is love. I feel like when you see something that is lovely to you, then there's a certain opening happens in your heart, kind of. And I think that's a good thing to follow, you know. And it's not that you have to be seeking it, like it'll happen on its own. The second time I entered the Sky Arts show, what I was trying to do to kind of fully be in my own skin, you know, occupying my own ground. And as soon as we do that, there'll be things all around us that begin to fizz and start. I feel like it's not as though you have to kind of pick up your brush straight away and think, right, suddenly, you know, I feel a little bit excited, I better do something. It's more like resting into yourself and allowing the ebb and flow of it all to be there too. And I think you can't push the river. Like if there is, I haven't done any painting for a wee while actually, but I suppose I do know that if I set up those flowers, or I saw my neighbour with a bunch of flowers today and I was like, oh, they're gorgeous. And she said, they have them in the local shop, so I'm going to go and get some because they made me feel excited. Like, see those these are pink tulips over my head here. And I mean, I was so delighted by those tulips. They don't look like tulips in my painting, but I got the pink paint out on my hands, you know, and looking at the light coming through them from it was a springtime, I think, and they were sat in front of the window, and there was this real beautiful bright pink and then the spring green, and it just felt like a very natural response to make all of this kind of excitable, all these excited hand gestures in response to what I was seeing. I suppose I'm saying that it's good to not feel like you have to perform and do something beautiful or something. When you see something that excites you, I would say just follow it. All you need to do maybe is to just follow it, you know. I feel like I'm making all these hand gestures. It's probably annoying, but that's what I was doing there. I thought I may as well focus the camera down because there's a whole lot of carry on happening down here. But that thing, like it's lovely. And as soon as you do pick up the paint, like I was squirting the ink on and everything, and it was so much fun. And you can get onto the ground, and I think engaging that kind of young childlike part of us, and it can open the gates to other things. You'll have heard me say this: serious art is born from serious play, or from taking the play seriously, like actually honouring that spirit in us that is creative. And as soon as there's just a little opening, something else will happen and something else will happen, and there'll be a. So that painting is staying with me because I loved the feeling of the pink on my hands. I mean, I don't know if anyone would recognise it as being flowers, but I remember the feeling I had when I look at that painting. More so than a really meticulously applied, beautifully botanically observed flower. I remember this explosion of like joy that I felt, and when I made that one. So I don't know if that's relevant to the question, really. Maybe it's more just to kind of remember to have fun, like, It has to be in there. Otherwise, we just get a bit stuck, I think. And it's lovely to be open to what might happen. So the playfulness is helpful.
Are there certain themes or subjects that don't give you like that spark, that playful, fun kind of feeling? And how do you approach those moments? Or do you just not go towards them at all?
Yeah. I remember an artist friend, Anne Oram, years ago, when I asked her, when I needed to make a bit of money, you know, I asked her kind of what sells, what subject sells. And she said, Áine, she said, don't go down that route. You do what you love and don't be trying to fucking do what works for other people. Sometimes, I'm looking at this actually, I did do this painting of Roslin Chapel. We lived in Roslin and I did this really detailed painting of the doorway.
Yeah, I
to
remember
Roslin
that
Chapel.
one.
And it did
It's
actually,
so good.
I still sell the prints of it. And so it's not like there's this kind of holier than thou idea that you always have to, you know, and I did enjoy doing it. I suppose I did like that doorway, to be honest. So she said that, and I've held to that, and it feels true, you know, that it's helpful not to follow what you think other people might want you to paint. But it's not so much that the subject might not be inspiring, it's my attitude towards the subject. And I find, like, in the last year, I've decided not to do commissioned portraits.
Okay.
Because that, while I always really love painting faces, I love to be free to paint them as I really want to. And no matter what I tell myself in my head, there's still this voice that says, but they need to like it, and you need to do it so that it's like them, and all of that stuff, you know? So I thought, I'm going to give myself a break from that. I love painting, like I did my brother's children this for Christmas for him, and I loved it, drawing them with pencil from photos, and there's something very, really lovely about that. And I loved the thing of giving demonstrations, and if the person likes the painting, they can have it, you know. Like I'll be giving a demonstration in the RSA in Edinburgh after Christmas, painting a fairly well-known creative man. He's amazing. He's a really strong, like, cultural figure in Edinburgh. He's in his 80s now. There's something about that. There'll be people there watching what's happening. It's nerve-wracking, but it's also exciting and feels fresh and new. And that feels very different from working from painting a commission. I'm still not very sure about it, but you asked what it was. If there's subjects that aren't inspiring, I think it's the quality of my attention. And if I'm thinking about they're paying big money for this thing and it needs to be good, that's taking space from my focused energy that could be devoted to looking at the particular touch of light on the eyelid, or there's some lovely things that you miss, you know. So I'm to open up space for whatever it is that might surprise us, you know, rather than have an idea. And I think no matter what you say, there will be some eye on the finished thing if it's a commission.
You covered two of the questions that I was going to ask, because you've mentioned like how much from the past interviews you enjoyed commissions, and I'm sure that's still, you know, the case. Like there's elements that you enjoy from them because you said they give like a connection between the sitter and you. But I was going to ask you, I wonder how you've ever had a commission that pushed you out of your comfort zone, or there was some kind of uncomfortableness in this navigating through this commission, and you pretty much answered it. I think, is it fair to say that it's partly because there's like an end goal that's already there, like this is what you need to do?
Because that's what I'm always trying to shift my focus from in every move. I'm trying to shift my focus from perfection and what you want it to look like and all of that, and back to now, back to now, back to now. That's the job in every second, like. And that, as far as I can see, is the job. There were times, I think in the interview I maybe said, as long as I'm painting 70% from life, I'm happy to still work from commissions. And I am. But it's funny, you know, I teach one-to-one. One of the things that I do with one of the people that I, over the last 2 years, we've been painting a model every 2 weeks or so. And last week, he brought me to paint a friend of his. This lovely man has a lot of time in his hands, I suppose, and he's sitting in his beautiful kind of bay window, and I'm painting him and loving it. And I paint for 10 minutes, and then the guy that I'm teaching paints for 10 minutes, and we just discuss what you might want to select here, what's helpful to look for, and remembering to roll the shoulders back, relax the belly, relax the muscles in the face. All of this is happening. And then I have a turn again and try and navigate his eyes. But by the end of the session, he said, we have one more session with this man. And he got in touch with me after and he said, whatever you do, they want to buy it. And that I suddenly started to think, shit, it's no longer a kind of, I said, how do I navigate this now? Because I'm all for artists naming their price and needing to, make a living as well. I'm all for that. So I didn't want to not honour myself or something by saying, not at all, just have it. But I realised that actually it really changed things for me when I started to see it as a commission. So what I said was, I'll carry on as we're working. You've paid for these sessions, and as far as I'm concerned, the material that comes out of them, I'm happy to give them that. But I'm not going to see it as a commission, because that changes my mindset. I mean, it was easy to say that, but I was a bit nervous the next day going in. He said, you can have as much time as you want. I don't need any time painting. You take all the time you want. And then I said, no, we're going to carry on. I mean, I did have a bit extra, and I was delighted to be painting this man. He was lovely, and I did feel I managed to stay present to every move. And it was really heartening that his wife was moved to tears when she saw it at the end of the session. So I'm satisfied with that. It kind of feels like it shifted that kind of thing.
It's a very difficult thing for, I think, non-artists to have in mind, that it kind of changes. Putting the focus in a weird way kind of doesn't get out the result that you want, almost. And it's hard to explain, I feel like, sometimes.
And I would say that some artists, and sometimes I would have found that I managed it no problem, and it was joyful. Like some artists, I would say maybe thrive on that, thrive on needing to make it recognizable, and the restriction of not having all the time in the world to go on forever and ever, because it's a finite thing that you're making. I had a dream actually about it. That's what made me. I was talking to my friend we have a dream group every couple of weeks, and in the dream, I had this pound of flesh. It was like I was giving a pound of my flesh, and the painting was a portrait and it was bleeding, and there was this awful thing. And I thought, what's this about? And when I investigated, it felt like the commission process. And I had a really wonderful commission. Someone was going to come from America to sit for me, and it was exciting and everything. And I thought to myself, I'm interested in them and everything, but I'm not wanting to do the painting, actually. I don't want this not knowing the person at all in advance. And so it felt really good in my system to say, no, I'm actually taking a break for a year, and I'll see what happens then. I think it would be exciting to be able to just have the bravado of doing what I do, saying take it or leave it. Not for my time. It's not like you have to fill it all out to the edges for it to be a beautiful thing. It could be a 10-minute thing, and the same, 3,000 or 5,000 or whatever it is that might have been slaved over for months, and maybe the life mightn't still be in it.
Elizabeth Gilbert in Big Magic is against the idea that creativity must come from pain. But I found like a couple of paintings that I really love myself was from like a deeply emotional experience. And I wanted to ask you if any of your paintings were created during like a darker or some challenging times in your life. Perhaps some of those that isn't obvious to the viewer that it's from that kind of time in your life.
Oh, right. Well, I don't know about being obvious to the viewer, but like a couple of years ago there, I would show up through desperation sometimes. I remember some mornings I would kind of show just because it felt like a good thing to do, to record myself talking to somebody as I painted. That process felt like a cathartic way for me to kind of use the creative process to come back to myself. It wasn't as though I did all this beforehand. It happened through painting, and sometimes I would find myself in tears of grief. Like often, there was some sort of softening happened as I was painting that made me compassionate towards myself enough that I could cry and feel the emotion. And I couldn't really even put into words what that emotion really was, but I could feel. Oftentimes it would be a self-portrait I'd be doing, or it might be flowers or something else, but I could kind of articulate it in the. I think it was a choiceless thing that it kind of was the marks that were put down somehow touched or opened up a channel for feeling to come, whatever that feeling was. And so there's that. And I could find some paintings like this. Most of the self-portraits have that kind of element in them. Because if I sit down with myself like that, it's often because I'm curious as to what's going on with myself, and somehow looking at myself can help me. And it's regularly coming back and doing that.
Wow.
But then when I was like 14 or 15 years ago, I did a lot of self-portraits. And when I separated from my daughter's dad, like that time, the time before and during and after, was a very, again, it felt like a really physical way of expressing, frustration, anger, and grief and loss as well, and just rawness and feeling torn apart, and like my skin had come off and it was just gravelly contact on flesh. That was the feeling. And I remember making portraits with gravelly surfaces and like running and flinging the paint on, and there was an awful lot went into those that had nothing to do with what I wanted the picture to look like. But one of those paintings, I think, is my favourite portrait I've ever done of anybody. And I ended up selling it in a Facebook sale spontaneously. And I kind of regret that. It's the only painting I regret selling. Because it kind of I remember stabbing the board with my brush, and it felt a bit kind of like I was twisted, and it just described how I felt. This kind of looking back but forward and stormy, and I remember running at the easel and really letting the mark kind of blast out of me, like those tulips that I was looking at. That was in that vigor and that kind of despair and fueled anger, rage, and there was a lot in there. I meant to ask you if you were okay with swearing, but it's too late now. I just swore there. Sorry.
No, I'm totally fine.
You didn't hear. Oh, sorry.
Whatever comes out of your mouth is golden.
I wish.
Do you have the photos?
Yeah, I have photos of all of them. And then I have some of the paintings still myself too. Some of them I wrote, I used my left hand, my non-dominant hand often, and I would write things on them and stuff as well. And some of those would be fairly personal, I suppose. But most of them are paint. But yeah, I was going to say, when I was really struggling with my mental health a few years ago, I joined an art therapy class, and we had a group. I had 1-to-1 sessions, and eventually there was a group of 4 of us who met weekly for 6 weeks. And I remember the final painting that I did there, and it felt like, because I was really quite distraught at times. I'd wake up and feel like I was surrounded by treacle, that dark syrupy trying to move out of myself. And there was something about the art therapy that allowed me to kind of own that and move with it. And the final painting I made, I called it Freedom. And I put all a few sheets of paper together on the ground, and again using my body, like pushing the paint up. And it turned out it was like the image of a woman kind of emerging from the water, and I remember again the feeling when I made that was one of like joyful openness and kind of cathartic movement through something, and I'm glad of all that time. I'm glad of the darkness, like the philosopher John O'Donoghue, he used to dig the turf with his father in the west of Ireland, and he said from the darkest peat comes the brightest flame. There's something, I think, inspiring in that.
Do you ever experience creative blocks?
Yeah, I do, and I have times when I feel quite stuck. Like I have times when I feel stagnant, and I've kind of made my peace with that, because I think there's a natural thing in nature where, how they say to leave the ground fallow for a while without anything growing in it. And I think there's something I do my best to trust my own rhythm. And I know, like Liz Gilbert, you were talking about, I know she shows up at the every day, shows up at the page religiously. As far as I know, that's her process. And a lot of other people say the same. And there are times when that feels to me like a good idea, to create structure and order and ritual around it. And then there are times when that doesn't apply. I find that there are times in the year, there are seasons in my system where if I were to put myself in front of the easel, it would be a violence against myself. There are times when I need to go into the woods and walk. That's sometimes what I need. And I think my energy is best applied in tuning in to what I need. We're so uninclined, I think, to do that as women, particularly, I think, in my experience. There's a kind of a really expertly deciding what other people's needs are. And when it comes to tuning into my own gut and deciding what actually do I need here, I need to cultivate that skill. And
listening to yourself.
Yeah, listening in. And it's a bodily kind of listening. It's not like logically what do I need to do, although that comes into it. First, I think, to feel what's happening here. You start to notice when you're a bit stuck or a bit kind of. I often find that walking helps, physically moving, dancing, making noise, and working with my non-dominant hand helps me. Movement is essential, I feel like. Movement through the movement of the emotion, to welcome whatever it is. It's really hard sometimes because I don't welcome some emotions. I definitely don't. But I suppose that's the noble intention as a human being, I guess, is to kind of say, yes, all of it is fine. Come on, the guest house thing with Rumi's poem about the guest house. Invite them in. Every morning a new one.
In the other interviews, you mentioned about Mark Rothko's orange and yellow painting with the white.
Yeah.
Once moved you to tears. Do you think your emotional response was influenced more by his life story, or do you think it's what we as viewers bring to the meaning of the artwork?
Well, I don't think I knew very much about him when I picked up that book. I didn't know anything about him, actually. I just saw the cover, and it wasn't a very good print even. It was something about the blazing light of that blazing white through it, and I had a kind of a visceral response to the shapes and the colours. That was it. I couldn't really explain it, but it was a good thing. It felt like a connection was made to my own system through looking at it. Maisie's trying to get some more treats here. She's figured out where they are, so I'll just give her another one. Sorry, there she is.
You said the best advice you received was that just truly go to what inspires you and how painting for others could lead you down a dangerous path. So looking back, what helped you stay true to that advice and keep your work primarily for what inspires you?
Well, what helped me stay true to it is the desire to live a life that feels fulfilling. And I don't want to be feeling like I'm tearing to the end of something in order to live my life. I want it to be imbued in the thing that I'm doing. And sure, I know often I don't. I mean, I've spent the day shopping for Christmas stuff. Like, I know in my general day-to-day living, I want to feel alive. It's the only tolerable thing. I'm really grateful that I'm able to do things that I really love to do. And I love the teaching, you see. So that's really good because it's all under the same umbrella. What I don't love, I discovered, maybe it'll change. What I don't love is working towards a show of work and framing it behind glass and putting it on the wall and having an open night and biographies and all the carry on. Maybe if someone else did all of the other stuff for me, I just love the process of painting. There are really fertile times, like maybe a couple of months in the year when I'm really loving it and alive to, and I maybe make loads of paintings and it feels like there's this joyful kind of energy around it all, and it's not for any purpose other than to satisfy myself. Those paintings often do end up on gallery walls and selling and things. So more and more I trust that. I trust that the thing to do is to just show up, and I think there is a value to having some structure around it. I don't think I'd ever manage 9 to 5 to sit down and do a kind of a structured day of painting unless I was really drawn into the subject and really wanted to keep at it. But I do think it's helpful to have a consistent creative practice, even if it's only for 5 minutes every day. And those 5-minute paintings often end up being bigger, broader things. And just that single step can open a current that takes me off.
Do you have a close artist friend who has walked a similar path to yours, like someone with whom you've shared experience and grown creatively together?
Well, the first person that came to mind when you said that there was a friend of mine whose He's actually a children's counsellor, but he's a poet, and his poems I find really inspiring. And I just love the turn of phrase and again what it makes me feel. You can feel them kind of, in your bones, like these lines of poetry. Talk about walking a similar path. We did walk an awful lot together. We used to go to dancing together, 5 Rhythms dancing. And after that, I suppose that kind of opens creative channels of all sorts, especially outdoors. And afterwards we would sit in a cafe and he would read the latest poems and I would be like delighted by it. So that feels to me the closest collaboration or some sort of thing. It's not that I ever used them particularly in my work or he never, but it's somehow there was really fertile ground there.
Lovely.
And
Maybe if he allows, maybe you can share your favorite one.
Well, I keep wanting to publish a book of his poems. I could say the first few lines of one of his poems just now, or no?
Yeah, why not?
This one is about the sea, and it reminds me a bit of the painting that I did at the art therapy thing. I think I'm part of that feeling of emerging from the ocean and the depths. Now talking to you, but that I think that might have come from that. So his poem is called Sorrow and the Sea. She came from the sea, dressed in kelp and siren song. Vast shoals swim in her eyes and circle her body. Effortless movement ripples in wondrous shimmering surges that gather the light and disperse it like 1,000 sparks of silver. You cannot look, yet dare not look away. So you stand still between moments, transfixed, the sand beneath your toes, holding on until the sea swells like the breath of all our living and reaches for the sky in almighty surge, longing for the crescent moon. She came from the sea.
Lovely.
I really love it because it delves into that kind of sorrow and grief and this human thing of us.
Since this podcast is called Art, Parenthood, and Beyond, has having 3 beautiful daughters influenced your paintings or your creativity in any sort of way?
It doesn't feel like a separate track or something. They often talk about it at the easel like it's as though you're giving birth to something here, soften the muscles in your face and ease your baby out, there's no pushing. So it seems like that might sound a bit strange, but I think that it is like creative energy is involved in parenthood hugely in all the interactions of having a child. You're always, I think, needing to be open to navigating the whole thing really feels like a creative pursuit, I think.
I kind of feel like painting feeds into the art because I'm a better person. And basically he feeds into me to create something. Maybe it's the subtle expressions in his eyes, something I want to paint. Like, has it fed your system, you think, in creativity?
Like as you're speaking there, I'm remembering almost on a daily basis painting my daughter Lily when she couldn't sleep. She would come into my bed and I would love to paint her in the morning. Like, there's something so beautiful, so very beautiful in the face of your child, the sleep and their warm loveliness, and just this kind of sea of material around them and stuff, and the whole kind of feeling of abandon or something, this little human being. And I remember doing that with all of my children. Like when my daughter was a couple of weeks old, my first daughter, I remember painting her when she was in my arm and painting her on the back of a card I got from somebody while she was sleeping in my arm, 2 weeks old in her head, the way that she was just kind of limply lying there. And still I paint them a lot. Like they get paid to sit for me now for workshops and different things. But I'm very grateful to have had like all of my children were born at home, and I remember that being a very important thing for me. I wanted again to fully occupy my body in it somehow. And so that was it's a very powerful memory in my body holding, that's the ultimate, I suppose, in this creative energy, isn't it, of having the privilege of holding another body in your own and birthing it, and the power that's there. However it manifests, and I've had friends who really intended to have home deliveries and went a different way. But in my experience, I'm very grateful that it did work out. It gives me a memory that I can draw on that feels powerful.
Watching you at the workshop, it felt almost like watching a martial artist dance.
Uh-huh.
Each brushstroke placed with tons of intention, maybe 10 times more intention in each brushstroke. When did you start painting with that level of intention and focus, do you suppose?
I think it partly had to do with inheriting my friend's paintbrushes when he died. His wife gave me this lovely wide 2-inch brush, and that's my duck, sorry. And I remember kind of this, feeling the kind of embodied power of this. It was a little bit like, it's like almost like a weapon or something that you could, that I just felt emboldened by it somehow, I think. I don't know if that was it, but that's what came to me when you asked the question. I had this sense that I would have been kind of nervous, and I wanted to give myself the best opportunity to kind of demonstrate clearly to people and things, in when I was teaching in high school and learning and doing my teacher training. I knew at the end of the day I'd have to know enough about this that I was learning to be able to pass it on to someone the next day, to a group of second year boys or something, and I remember it being useful to use movement to dissipate that feeling of fear that I had. And so I remember kind of talking about that and that coming in as part of the teaching. I think it was maybe through needing to move, like having to actually shake it off, and to stop myself being in a state of overwhelm around this vulnerable thing I was going to be doing. And the more that it worked, then the more I did it.
It's always not just one thing, is it? It's like a
No.
couple things put together, yeah.
It's a good question. I can't really remember exactly when it started, but I think that brush had a lot to do with it, that 2-inch brush.
You mentioned about this friend who passed away and gave you the brush. It's amazing how like the people who's not here anymore can have like a profound difference like in what you do, almost. And it's kind of like a nice story to keep.
Yeah, it's lovely. And actually, before we move on, there's another, Gabrielle Roth, who she developed the 5 rhythms dance. Anyway, she's dead now, but she said the fastest way to still the mind is to move the body, and that was all about, to use dance, like 5 rhythms dance. I find it very cathartic. But let's get on with your question.
Okay, sorry. There's so many things I want to ask you. From the summer school that I've been to, that Kokenzi house, you use flat brushes for portraits. And I have to say, rosemary flat brushes, Áine Divine said, very lovely. I use it to this day. What is it about a flat brush that gives you more control or a different result compared to a round brush? Like, what is the thing that makes flat brushes so different for you?
Yeah, the thing that makes them so different for me is that the geometrical shape. There's something like you have to select what's important. When there's something about putting it down in a way that's clear, and there is a bit of geometry to it. And like I would err on the side of using the bigger ones of the flat brushes, so that I just do 1 mark rather than 5 to make a thing. Because I think I want to keep the response as clean as possible. And so having seen something like the shape of a shadow, say on my cheek there or something, having seen that, I want to do my best to explain it as economically as possible. And the 2-inch brush in one move will explain that for me, so that there's still space around it somehow. And it's not all explained in too much detail. So I love that about them. And also you can print an edge. They're very versatile. You can splash the paint on. And I think I like angles. I'm not so interested in curving everything. I like that there's like jaggy edges to us and the planes of the face.
Yeah, layers.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. I was surprised at how you managed to create an eye, suppose like a socket or something, with just the tiniest bit of the flat brush. It was just amazing. So watching you paint, it's clear that you embrace the flow of the creative process, and you quote Picasso quite often. He said that I begin with an idea and then it becomes something else. So when you start a painting during the demonstration at the workshop, do you ever get an instinct that it doesn't feel good? Like something is not gonna be as nice? as you want it to in your head? And if so, what mindset or techniques help you shift gears?
If I ever start to feel like it's not as I want it to be, the painting isn't the issue, it's the thought. It's the thought that I don't want this to be as it is, because it is what it is. And it's like improvisation on stage. You want to say yes to everything that's there. And then see what happens next, rather than try and retrace. Yeah, there's something about forward momentum that's important. And so I would question the thought, and I would maybe, if it was in a workshop, I would maybe say, I don't always, but if I notice it, I would maybe say, no, I'm giving myself a hard time because this isn't what I wanted it to be. It's not as good as I want it to be successful, and it's not really working as I want it to. So there's a whole thing going on in my head just now. So I would try and bring that to the group, like, and say, it's desperate when that happens, isn't it? You know, and then there's something that happens in that, even just communicating that already, there's a shift. And then I maybe would let myself try something wild, like pick up the biggest brush, the most fluid color, and just go, fuck, you know. And really, it doesn't matter, you know. What did you say? You know those moments? Did you say?
I've seen those moments like during your workshop where I can sense you moving quite a lot, and maybe I was thinking, is this like a good side, or the, oh, this is not going the right side.
Yeah.
And when you just like splash and you're like, okay, come on.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
almost like you're trying to shift that gear.
Yeah, there is a thing, and there's that chasing. You know, you can kind of pick up on the energy of chasing something, like trying to get it, just like pursuing a thing. And as soon as it's noticed, that's gold. Like, as soon as you notice you're doing it, and thanks for not saying it before I noticed it. You know what I mean? When people are watching, you feel like they know. But it's good to come up with it yourself, I think, and to realize, oh, hang on, draw back. And I think standing back often, like 2 or 3 steps back, or maybe right to the corner of the room, and turn around and walk away from it, and then turn back around and look at it, because you want to see it freshly again, and something will occur to you with any luck, you know.
Apart from looking at your live demonstrations, I really appreciated when you advised me to reflect on my own direction before seeking feedback from you. It made me realize that I hadn't fully defined my goals. And I get the sense that you followed inspiration rather than like a fixed direction. Is there a particular message or emotion you aim to communicate through your work? Or is it more about the process or being present at that moment?
Yeah, for me, it's the process and being present. Those are the things that nourish me, really. And I see in other people there are different things. Like, one man came and he was an architect, and he has this sense of design, and he built his painting bit by bit, and he wanted to stay in the room after everyone had gone. And the next day his painting was very different from what he had set out with. From what I'd seen, it was 4 more hours in the studio making it his painting. And I thought to myself, that was really good. If I had been standing near him for those 4 hours, it might have turned out a different painting, you know. I felt like he needed to have his own space to do his own thing. And it kind of made me realize that not everybody's motivation is the same as mine. Like, everyone's got a different motivation. Like, you might want sometimes to have this kind of focused attention on what's here now. And there might also be room for, like, I remember a woman in Ireland, lovely Rose, she put birds into her still life. These are flower painting workshops I'm talking about, but sometimes it can happen in portraiture as well, that, you know, Matisse said exactitude is not truth. And sometimes something arises in a portrait that feels true in the essence of the thing, but it's not a literal representation. And that's wonderful to see. And I need to remind myself that I'm not here to up a bit, down a bit, left a bit, right a bit kind of to people, which is like hard. Unless they want that, unless we can have a conversation around it and decide together the modelling of this thing here, and, you know, what are you seeing and what do you want? I think as the painting goes on, it poses questions. You kind of start to think, do I want to have a full body in here and flowers on the dress, or do I want to focus only on the face and let everything else be wild and free? And there's different answers as the painting goes on and the day goes on.
There's some beauty in just going with the flow.
Yeah.
At the workshop, you emphasized the importance of organizing your space. You've mentioned it earlier in this interview as well. And having everything like, your water here, the paper towels here, the palettes in place, allowing for a clear space to step back and forth from the easel. I know you appreciate Matisse's idea of creating space in art, but I'm curious, assuming you weren't always that organized, being the same ENFP as I am, was there a turning point or experience that helped you develop this sense of organization?
I guess gradually over time, I recognized that I needed, again, it would have been probably preparing for a demonstration, that when I took time to give myself to set up my station before the workshop and before people started coming in, I did a much better job of the painting in the demonstration. I recognized that it was valuable to me to be able to give my energy to the people, and when it came to it, to give my energy to the painting, and not to be concerned with all of this kind of secondary stuff that could be organized in advance. And I think
So teachings helped you quite a lot in
teaching has
that
helped me a
terms.
lot, yeah. And then there's some mornings, this is the living room, and I loved over lockdown painting at home. And I ended up giving up my studio actually so that I could just continue to paint at home. Because I think it needs to be part of daily life, just picking up the brush and doing something. And I'm talking about that in this context because sometimes there can be complete chaos. There could be a lot of bags of stuff around me, and that can be kind of inspiring because I can think there's the blue in that bag that I could tear and make that phase there, and there's stuff here that I could use for the background, and that brush is just right for this. So sometimes you're happy with the chaos, so that's lovely, and you can kind of, again, it's a bit like nature, like things need to break down and get chaotic, and then out of that something new can happen. But I think always I want to have clean water. I want to be able to easily access my whatever it is I'm using. There's always, like in every kind of statement, I can kind of think of reasons at the opposite too. Like there's something lovely about having to get up and run to the corner of the room to pick this particular thing out and fling it on, and then go somewhere else. There's this lovely kind of a dance like that can happen. And then there are times when I need a clean table and nothing around me and just peace and quiet and single two pieces of colour and maybe one particular piece of paper, and restrict myself completely to that. And that's what's called for other times. So it's not always all tidy, and certainly it's the tidiness comes with demonstrating and stuff. Again, it's something I've learned that works for me, so I do it personally as well now.
It's interesting. You need like chaos, but you need some kind of organization within the chaos.
Yeah, order. Yeah, some bit of order.
So back to this Matisse's idea of creating space in art. I love this idea as well, but there's also the need to find space in time, especially with all the demands placed on artists. Like we have to wear different kind of hats from social media in administrative tasks. So how do you manage to carve out time for creativity within these like responsibilities that you have?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. And that's again the consistent practice thing. Like at the moment, I'm kind of out of the way of it because I've been on holidays in Ireland and I'm doing a filmmaking course and I'm kind of into that. But I know that come the new year, and even now I want to get back to my regular ritual of yoga and meditation paint in the morning. And if I start the day with a picture, or if I start the day with some kind of creative practice, that's a good day. It feels like I'm already on a winner, no matter what it turns out like. I can emphasize that because there's something very arresting when you want to make a masterpiece, and there's something that kind of arrests it all. Whereas if your purpose is simply to keep the creative practice happening, then you're already a success just by showing up with a pencil on the back of an envelope.
How much percentage-wise do you suppose you put into painting, say, and the rest, like administrative and whatnot that goes around art?
Well, it might be easier to decide that if I was to take a full year, because this past week I've not painted, but I have been creative. And I don't know anyone who's not creative on a daily basis, actually, just managing to navigate life. But I'd say something like 30% maybe painting time.
30%
I
painting.
think so, yeah.
Really?
I think so.
And you get that much amazing artworks.
I don't do an awful lot of paint. Yeah, I'm not very. And I used to really beat myself up about it. People seem to think that I did an awful lot, and I didn't. I suppose that thing of 5 minutes, you can do a thing in 5 minutes every day. It's amazing how short periods of creative bursts pay off. And it can be really ugly stuff, but it doesn't matter. It's just consistent admin stuff. I try and devote time separately to that isn't in my creative space if I can. So it really helps me to go to a coffee shop, relax, look at the view, do a bit of reading, and then I become creative with the stuff that needs to happen online or whatever.
So, last question from me.
Well,
So, can you tell us more about your workshop? How often do they take place, and do they usually follow like a particular seasonal schedule?
well, I don't know if ENFPs are kind of considered disorganized, are they? I think we might be. For fuck's
Yeah.
sake. Yeah, it's desperate. Like, I just kind of put things in place. Although the summer school now, that happens. So there's the summer school at Kirkland, which I put in the diary usually a year in advance. And I also go to the Schoolhouse for Art in Ireland, and that's in the diary every year, 4 days there in the summer. And they've asked if I'll do a flower painting course there as well this year. So I'm going to do a weekend. We've yet to decide when, in Ireland another time. And then I go to Cambridge for 2 or 3 day workshops in September usually. So those are kind of this steady. For a while I went a lot of places teaching, and I realised while I love travelling, I don't actually want to travel and teach too much. Like, I want to be able to travel with my children when they were younger. And if I go on holidays, I want it to be for myself now. But there were some places that I went that I really love. I love that teaching in Ireland, and I love that teaching in Cambridge. And those are the ones I wanted to keep. So Andy Massey Studios in Cambridge and the Schoolhouse for Art in Ireland. So that feels like a nice kind of, I love being there. Those are the two. And then I also do 6-week online watercolor portraiture workshops, flower painting and mixed media, and a landscape workshop. So those 3 are in place for the spring, summer this year. And I think I will be doing another flower painting one as well in spring.
It sounds fun. Like I want to be able to go to more of these. I'm definitely going back to your summer school in the future.
Are you?
It was just a lovely experience.
It was good. Yeah, I love it there at Kirkland.
So good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a great place. There's a
Isn't
lot
it?
of good energy.
Yeah. I love it.
I asked Yuta and Claire and Nana. There are a few people, and Joe as well, that went to your workshop and want to ask you a few questions. So I have 4.
Well, that's really nice if they're watching.
Hello. So this is from Yuta. How do you choose colors for a portrait? Do you respond to a mood, or is it more about the personality of the sitter?
Well, hi, Yuta. I think that I would say it's probably more to do with observation and what's being revealed to me at this moment. And I like to hold the palette up as I'm mixing the colour that I'm aiming for, so I'm as true as it can be to what's here, and then put it on with that kind of abandon. And at some point, sometimes there's a desire to put more colour in, and I think then that maybe has to do with mood, but it's not something that's a plan in advance. It kind of happens on its own, I think, and it's lovely when that kind of honestly simmers up inside me. I think I'm going to put turquoise in the eyelid because I just feel it's turquoise. There's something authentic in it. Whereas if I in advance decided that's going to be a turquoise eyelid, I like for it to come from the moment. So it has got to do with the mood of the thing, and maybe the personality of the sitter comes into it as well. Maybe there's more of a colourful thing happening in some folk. Yeah, I don't know. Like, this guy was a sitter from the Schoolhouse for Art workshop. It was the demonstration there, and I just loved his. It's not very colourful. I don't think he had an easy life, but that has nothing to do with colour, so that was totally irrelevant. I was just pulling it out for some reason. But yeah, so thanks, Yuta, for that question.
From Claire, what draws you to a portraiture, and what tips would you give for painting self-portraits?
Well, what draws me to portraiture is just this fascination with us, the shape of our bones under our skin, like each one of us different. And on a different day, each face is different and a different lighting. And I would say fascinating. I think we are fascinating to look at. I mean, we're fascinating creatures. And it's the face that, I feel like the face is the most expressive part of that somehow. Maybe because it's like all the senses are around here, and it feels like there's the possibility of engaging together and making something that's an entity of its own, but has something to do with our two faces facing each other. There's something in I find it really exciting. I was looking at, even today in the cafe, at this man, and I thought, God, he's got such an inspiring look to him. The kind of the length of a person, and the particular little things, we all have these particular little things about us. And then painting
I hope
yourself.
he didn't feel strange, you looking at him.
Yeah, I don't know. He maybe started getting a bit kind of itchy. Sometimes, like, I go up and say, "Would you mind coming, sitting for me or taking their number?" But sometimes I feel like I'm brave enough to do that. And then painting yourself, I would say one of the things that's really useful. Like, I often find looking in the mirror in the bathroom, I think the light is really good there. So find a place where you're inspired by the light on your face, because that can make it much more exciting than just deciding to sit down and paint yourself. Like, take a little bit of time to set up the situation, and also find a position where you feel comfortable yourself, and that you can see your face and see the board by only moving your eyes while still being quite limbered up in your body. So I think all of that helps to kind of mean that your energy can be focused on really looking. And it's exciting to have a look at yourself. It's exciting. Sometimes you can feel quite moved at this poor thing, looking back at you. I think Rembrandt has this kind of quality in his painting sometimes, of this. You just feel the kind of pathos of life,
Claire also asked, having done life drawing in pencil, what's the transition like for you between drawing and painting?
Yeah. And hi, Claire, as well, sorry. Claire came over to the schoolhouse this year as well. It was lovely to see her after Cockenzie. She came to Ireland, and we
Yeah,
saw
I
her all over
heard.
again.
That's
So really
amazing.
lovely. It's a long time since I've done life drawing with a pencil. I think I would use tone and maybe just charcoal and things, but I don't know if I've drawn with a pencil in a life drawing class for a while. I'll just talk about what I would see as being the transition from drawing to filling in areas of tone. It's wonderful, the gestural movement that people can grasp with charcoal or pencil. You can bring that same broad energy to drawing as you do to paint. And I think it's that kind of the broad, seeing the full picture, and then the particular thing, and the full picture and the particular thing, and that spiraling in and spiraling out, being part of it. It doesn't really matter what the medium is then, I think. But I love that paint can quickly explain a whole area of tone in one single move. And also printed can make an edge of a face or something. I would recommend giving it a go for anyone who's always used a pencil. Give the 2-inch brush a go.
From Nana, your paintings look so intuitive. Do you see yourself as an intuitive artist, or was that a style that developed over time?
I guess I maybe always do what I can to just show up and do it without really having an idea in advance. And I suppose maybe that what's intuitive about it is that it's trusting whatever shows up here is going to be good enough. So I guess I would welcome, if I am intuitive in my art making, I welcome that. And there'll be times when I'm very much not, but want to be, But I guess it's in the mix there for sure. Probably more so, yeah. It would be an intention of mine, I suppose, actually, to do what I can to tune into myself enough that whatever comes is an intuitive response to what's here.
From Joe, how do you decide which media to use for different subjects like portraits, flowers, and landscapes?
I've noticed that I love to use mixed media with flowers, but then I give a watercolor workshop. I was asked to do a watercolor flower painting workshop in the summer. And I really enjoyed using watercolor for the flowers as well. I guess I just don't feel like, how you see some amazing botanical artists and people who know how to use cling film to make roses and salt to make, like, there's some people on my online courses who are so clued up about all the different things that watercolor can do and all the variety and everything. like I don't do that with watercolor, and I like to have variety in my work. So I think that's why mixed media comes in, because when I'm painting flowers, I feel like it's not enough just to use watercolor paint, whereas I do think it's enough with faces somehow. Maybe because we feel kind of watery. I feel like we're, as a substance, we're fairly watery things. I suppose flowers maybe are as well, but when I'm painting a flower, I feel like I want to kind of tear and stick, and I want to have options for the different textures. So I loved using mixed media. I'll show you there. Look. There's one over here that was from a demonstration painting, and there's
Wow.
I think there's collage here, and there was some ink, and I turned the page sideways to have the ink going that way. And then I used a stencil for some of the leaves. And it's just kind of exciting to have the opportunity of pulling lots of different things. Maybe it's to do with texture or something. And then when I'm painting models in the studio, I used to go regularly to class with my friend Colin, who gave me the brushes, and there was oil paint there ready for us and primed paper, and so that influenced what I did, how I painted the models there. Often I would use the paint that was provided and ended up painting sometimes in acrylic underneath and then oil on top. And he occasionally would have collage as well, so I'd use that too. It felt like a place to explore. So that kind of influenced the easy access to all these materials and not having to clean it up after.
Joe did ask another question.
Oh yeah.
Do you play any instruments?
I play the accordion, the button accordion. Not very well,
Really?
but I brought it back with me this time. It's in the cupboard there. I play kind of Irish jigs and reels. I can't, my face goes completely like blank and I can't talk or sing. I just have to kind of, I do a bit of a diddly eye kind of thing with the accordion. And that's about it, actually. I don't think I play anything else. A little bit of the piano, but not much. My daughter's really musical. There's a piano behind me here. She's two of them are particularly musical, actually. But when I was 8 until I was 12, my mum took us to accordion lessons, myself and my two sisters. And I was kind of in between. One of my sisters was really good, and the other one was kind of, didn't like it at all. I don't think she'd mind me saying she wasn't very good. And I was kind of in between.
Do I know one of these sisters?
Oh, Eileen was really good, yeah. Eileen was the one who she always knew the tunes and everything.
Okay.
The other one didn't.
Oh, wow.
She was more interested in horses.
Finally, I want to do some lightning rounds. Tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Morning painting or evening painting sessions?
Morning.
Wet on wet or dry brush?
Dry brush.
Brush strokes or splattering?
Both. Can I do that?
I'll let you go off with this one. 1 inch or 2 inch flat brush?
2 inch.
Daisies or sunflowers?
Daisies.
Ultramarine or viridian?
Ultramarine. All day long.
Singing or dancing?
Dancing. I'd like it to be singing, but it's dancing.
Acrylic or collage?
Collage.
The artist's way or you're more creative than you think?
The artist's way.
Commissions or workshops?
Workshops.
Taking a step back or organizing space?
Taking a step back.
Matisse or Mark Rothko?
Matisse.
Georgia O'Keeffe or Frida Kahlo?
Frida Kahlo.
Capturing likeness or capturing emotion?
Emotion.
Mindful breathing or physical grounding?
Physical grounding.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
There has to be like the option of both, for feck's sake. A few times there I was really torn.
Nope.
Cruel.
Yeah,
but you're great.
yeah,
Thanks very much. You're really good at
thank you.
All the preparation and everything. And thank you so much for agreeing to, for having me on here. You do a wonderful job.
Oh, thank you. This has been a Christmas gift for myself.
I feel like you've had to kind of work a lot, you've had to tolerate a lot of shifts in my schedule and things. So thank you for that.
No, not at all. Thank you. I hope everybody enjoys it.
It's been a real pleasure chatting. This is really inspiring, talking about the whole thing, isn't it? The whole kind of creative thing that we do.
It's just so fun. I just can go off, because it's such a huge area to talk about.
Yeah, bless you. So quite a task. You have a lovely holiday.
I will. Thank you, Anya.
Bye. Happy painting, everybody.